Hello and welcome to the Video Tourist. In this series, I'm going to be cycling around some of New York City's more amazing neighborhoods and pointing out to you nearly everything they have to offer. With a history rich in prostitution and industry, dereliction and illegal artist studios, SoHo is now home to chic boutiques, artist lofts, luxury designer stores and galleries in stunning architecture on cobblestone streets. So stay right there and let's see what's coming up on today's episode. Alright, and welcome to Green Street in Soho, one of the most popular shopping streets for art galleries and high-end boutiques in all of New York City. Now, while I'm going to be showing you a street full of luxury, I'm also going to be showing you a street full of stunning architecture. Because since 1973, this neighbourhood has been part of the Soho Cast Iron Historic District and has the highest concentration of these fantastic cast iron buildings in the world. Cast iron is a particularly American style of architecture that was popular for commercial buildings in the late 1800s because it could be easily moulded to create these decorative facades that we see here, for example, at number 20, where the two-storey penthouse condominium with a rooftop landscape garden sold for a reported $36 million in 2022, breaking a New York City record for a non-doorman building. Now, Green Street is very unique, as there are few streets in the world where one can attach a fridge magnet like so to nearly all of the buildings that we see here, including to the local landmark, the Queen of Green, this grey painted building at 28 Green Street. Constructed to be a warehouse, believe it or not, in 1873 in a French Second Empire style. The strength of cast iron also allowed it to be used for the skeleton of these new buildings, resulting in the rise of very attractive department stores, factories and warehouses with bigger windows and more internal spaces, like this building coming up here on the corner at 85 Grand Street. Oh, but first I want to show you this. If you stand at this spot, you'll be viewing one of the iconic images of Soho. This is the longest consecutive row of cast iron buildings in the world, and thus is very popular for photo shoots, magazine covers and social media posts. Now let me just cross the street here first and turn at the corner to show you 85 Grand. Constructed in 1872 in a neo-Grecian style, it was built to be a warehouse and a showroom for silk. The 1988 movie Big, starring Tom Hanks, was filmed here. Now take note, whenever I show you something of interest, the graphic in the upper left will give you its name, the year it was completed, in what style and by whose design. If it's a landmark, the name will be in green. Next up is the historic If Boutique, which has been here at 94 Grand Street for almost 30 years. Originally opened by three siblings on West Broadway back in 1978, this is the oldest clothing store in Soho, so it's well worth a visit. Now, after the American Civil War ended in 1865, there was a boom in manufacturing nationwide, and the beautiful two-storey red brick federal homes that once lined all of Green Street were razed to make way for the expanding garment industry, with most of the buildings that we see here being constructed during this time. Green Street itself was named after Nathaniel Greene, who was a veteran of the War of Independence and one of General George Washington's most trusted officers in the fight against the British. Nearly every street in Soho is named after an American general from the Revolutionary War, including Worcester Street, Mercer Street, Thompson Street and Sullivan Street. You'll notice few trees along these beautiful Soho streets, and that's because the basements for these buildings come out as far as the roadway itself and thus are mainly covered with these massive stone slabs and metal sheets. Okay, now let me turn and show you the Gunter building here on the corner. Completed around 1872 in a second Empire Baroque style, it was built to be a showroom and warehouse for fur. The short pedestals either side of that second floor curved window used to have statues on them, which would each day be dressed in whatever the latest fashion was. That must have looked very cool. Since the 1970s, it has been a cooperative for artists and creative types. The American musician Lenny Kravitz used to call it home. Up on the next block, we see the 28-foot wide Silk Exchange building. I'll show you more of that historic landmark in about 15 minutes. But next I want to show you one of my favorite galleries down here. This is Eden Gallery. Now I'm just going to leave the bike here for a second. This is one of a global network of high-end art galleries representing a selection of international artists. I love looking around here. 4 stories of amazing art. Very cool. And it's to beside the Eden Gallery that I've come to meet my good friend, the New Hampshire artist Sadie Seacamp. How are you, Sadie?
Hi, Kieran.
Now, Sadie has painted a stunning map in watercolour depicting the route I'm going to be cycling through SoHo today. Pause the video now if you'd like to print the map for the website so you can mark off any places that interest you. That's perfect, Sadie. Thank you.
See ya.
Very cool artwork. Now, I'm also showing you a quick video that depicts the route that Sadie has painted. Starting in the heart of Lower Manhattan, I'm going to be cycling along Green Street showing you all the luxury boutiques as we pass them, including the Polo Ralph Lauren store at the historic 109 Prince Street. Then we're heading over to the gateway to SoHo, one of the largest public art installations in New York City. Traveling down the famous Broadway, we're going to have a stop at probably the greatest monument to cast iron architecture in the world, before making our way over to the Rapkin-Gayle Plaza, which honours the 2 people most responsible for the SoHo that we see today. Before we finish this episode back on the renowned Canal Street. Now continue north on Green Street. On the left, I am coming up to Francesco's SoHo, a popular bistro in an Italian bakery. But of course, it is the Lamborghini that is catching everyone's attention on the street today. And it is not out of place here in SoHo one single bit. That looks like the Aventador model, I think. Let's cross over here to have a full look at it. But I'm also over here to show you, well, I'm going to move up here in front of the Rolex store first. Next, in 2020, the British singer Zayn Malik of One Direction fame reportedly rented one of the penthouses here at the Olbermann and Company building. Constructed in 1877 in a Neo-Grec and Queen Anne styles, it was built to be a factory for silk. Now, I understand many of my viewers are watching from abroad and may be learning English, so in this series I will be speaking as slowly, clearly and as grammatically correct as I possibly can. If you wish, enable the subtitles for this video because they are perfectly aligned with what I am saying. Now, I want to take a moment to explain the rest of the graphics at the top of your screen. As I'm cycling, the white name in the middle is the street that I'm on, the red name on the left is the street that's behind me, and the green name on the right is the street I'm approaching. Earlier on, I showed you the Queen of Green, and here we find the King of Green by the same architect, the famed Isaac Duckworth. Completed in 1873, it is considered to be the finest example of French Renaissance and French Second Empire in the entire district. A very cool looking building. They all are cool looking buildings, actually. Now, in New York City, major manufacturing began to decline in the years between World War I and World War II. And SoHo started to deteriorate so much that many landlords simply abandoned a lot of these buildings, which resulted in such a decline in the neighbourhood that former FDNY Commissioner Edward Kavanagh named SoHo Hell's 100 Acres because of the nightly blazes New York City firefighters had to battle, some of which allegedly were set by the owners themselves. Moving on, here at 129 Spring Street, we have one of the oldest and maybe the most haunted house in SoHo. Built in 1817 in a federal style, the basement of this Cost clothing store contains a brick well at the bottom of which the remains of a murdered woman was discovered in 1799. To this day, her spurs reportedly still haunts the building. Now, some more history. In the early 1960s, artists attracted to the high ceiling lofts and the cheap rent moved into the abandoned buildings and began illegally living and working here, before eventually in the 1970s being granted legal residency. SoHo streets are paved not with cobblestones but with Belgian blocks, which have been used as ballast on sailing ships returning from Northern Europe. By the 1980s, SoHo had become the epicenter of New York City's art scene, with more artists moving into the gritty neighborhood and more galleries hosting such luminaries as Andy Warhol, Keith Haring and Jean-Michel Basquiat. to name but a few. Up next is our first major work of New York City street art. And no, not Totem, here on the right, by the Dutch sculptor Hans van de Bovenkamp. And neither is it the stone carving by the Japanese artist Kin Haratsuka. No, commissioned by Tony Goldman, owner of the SoHo building here at 110 Green Street. Our first major work of New York City street art is this. Named Subway Map Floating on a New York Sidewalk, it was created by the Belgian artist Francois Schein and is modelled on the 156 stations that were on New York City's subway system at the time this was installed here back in 1985. By using glass to mark the stations at night, the light from the building's basements would illuminate all of the subway stops. Most people walking the street here are oblivious to this amazing piece of art. Next door, Stella McCartney is located at 112 Green, a space previously occupied by the famous Green Street Recording. In the 1980s and 90s, this recording studio was headquarters for hip-hop music. Run DMC's first hit, It's Like That, was recorded here, as was Public Enemy's Fight the Power. Other stars to record here include LL Cool J, Ice Cube, James Brown, the Beastie Boys, Salt and Pepper, Black Eyed Peas and New Order. That is a cool mural across the street. I'll tell you more about that shortly. But next, completed in 1881 in a classic style, 116 to 118 Green Street has been the SoHo home for Louis Vuitton since the late 1990s. (122 Green Street here on the corner used to be a brothel. Well, the house that used to stand here in the mid-1800s used to be a brothel at least. Now, passing the Apple store here in the corner, I'm going to walk up Prince Street to show you two attractions. New York City is awash with movie locations, and at 102 Prince Street here, where Louis Vuitton is also located, we find the apartment that Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze's characters lived in the 1990s movie Ghost. Think the pottery scene. And if we continue up the block to Mercer Street, we'll find on the corner the historic Finelli Cafe. Considered by many to be New York City's second oldest restaurant, various owners have operated it since 1847. I'll show you more Finelli's next season when I bring you SoHo Part 2. Now let's take a closer look at that mural again. Created in 1974 by the legendary artist Richard Haas, dubbed the greatest architectural muralist of his time, this mural on the side of 112 Prince Street has 55 fake windows, imitating the real facade at the front of the building. Restored in 2023, it now includes some of the pets that actually lived in the building at the time of that renovation. This mural is one of the earliest and most public expressions of postmodernism in New York. Now I'm crossing back over Prince to show you another historic building. But first, 103 Prince Street here used to be a post office, built in the 1920s in a classical style. Since 2002, it has been the New York City flagship retail store for Apple. Across on the other corner is 109 Prince Street. Designed in 1882 in a French Renaissance style, this has been described as one of the most striking gems of 19th century cast iron architecture in the world. Today it has been home to Polo Ralph Lauren since around 2010. Coming up, we have a city bike station. You can use the kiosk here on the left to buy a 24-hour day pass for $25, which gives you unlimited 30-minute rides during that time. It costs $5 if you just want to take the bike for a single 30-minute trip anywhere. You can download and get access through the City Bike app as well. New York City has 1,500 miles of bike lanes, so this is a great way to see the city. In the mid-1800s, SoHo was the center of New York City's entertainment industry, with Broadway 2 blocks to the east being home to major shopping, hotels and theaters. This whole street was filled with quaint 2-story Federal-style family homes, but gradually these filled with brothels, which resulted in the area becoming New York City's first red light district, with Green Street alone at one point having up to 41 brothels on it. The red light district was short-lived as manufacturing and warehousing took over the district in the 1880s, and that is when most of these stunning buildings that we see today were built. Next, we're coming up on one of the last of those 2-story Federal-style homes that used to fill the whole of Green Street. The Anthony, our new house, was built in 1825 for a wealthy tailor and his family, but eventually it too became a brothel, but not one of your ordinary brothels. The Gentleman's Companion, an 1870s guide to New York City's red light district, called 139 Green Street a house of assignation, which meant its clients were women. Next door we find the Train Gallery. and the Aesthetic Realism Foundation, which exhibits contemporary art showcasing the relationship between the technique of art and people's lives. It's been located here on Green Street since 1973. Up next, we're coming up onto the street that gives the neighbourhood its name. SoHo is an acronym for South of Houston. The street is named after William Houston, who had married into the family who once owned this land. It is a major east-west thoroughfare for downtown New Yorkers, connecting the Franklin D. Roosevelt Drive on the east to the Joe DiMaggio Highway on the west, better known locally as the West Side Highway. On the corner we see the popular cafe Felix Roasting Company, and beyond that we'll find New York's own Van Leeuwen ice cream. Sold nationwide, all of their ice creams are made from scratch at their factory about 2.5 miles to the east in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. If you were to keep heading north, the next neighbourhood is Greenwich Village. The famed Washington Square Arch is only a few blocks away. But we're heading east on Houston Street. And coming up across Houston on the corner we have the Cable Building. Completed in a Beaux-Arts style in 1894, this New York City landmark building was the offices for the company which ran the San Francisco style cable cars along Broadway at the turn of the 19th century. On our right we're passing the Mercer Bar. This upscale version of a gastro pub is a recent addition to the neighbourhood. And we are coming up on Mercer Street. Now in the basement of the Cable Building, in the former cable car power plant, is where we find the excellent Angelica Cinema and Cafe. Since 1989 it's been the home of the self-described most recognised art house in the United States, and is very popular with foreign and independent filmmakers. I've been here a lot of times. It's a great movie theatre. Moving on, we're coming up on one of New York City's most famous streets. I'm going to move fast here now and try and make the lights. And right on the corner we find one of the largest ever public art installations in New York City. Give me a minute. This is Broadway, the city's oldest thoroughfare. Let's make a left here. If we keep going north, we'll enter NoHo, which stands for North of Houston. But I want to turn here in a second to show you this. The Wall by the minimalist artist Forrest Myers was installed here back in 1975. Clocking in at 8 stories high, this huge piece of art is also referred to as the gateway to SoHo. And here is your first subway alert. If you want to get to this location, take a B, D, F or M train to Broadway Lafayette Street Station, just down the block. If we keep going west on Houston, we'll pass the neighbourhood of Nolita, which stands for North of Little Italy. But coming up, I'm entering the northern part of Soho's Broadway, and this is where you will find the shops of the top brands. But next, let me jump in off the street here to show you this cool restaurant. Give me a minute here. This is where you will find the artisan Italian cuisine hosted by Manja, with its cool 1960s Italian train station themed interior and great food. Okay, let me keep going when I can. Here we go. We are heading south on Broadway, and coming up on the corner we've got the red brick Rogers, Peat and Co building. Completed in 1882 in a commercial palace style, which is similar to the Italian palazzo style. It's only fitting so that since 2001 this has been the SoHo flagship store for the Italian luxury giant Prada. Next I want to show you a very cool piece of street art. This is one of New York City's earliest and best known one-line carved sidewalk art pieces. Let me get down here to turn first. There are too many people here at the moment, so I'm going to show you your next subway alert instead. If you want to get to this location, you will take a WRR train to the Prince Street station. Now in 1984, the Japanese stone sculptor Ken Hiratsuka illegally chiseled a single continuous line into the stone sidewalk here over several months, and in the dead of night to avoid being arrested. Very cool. Right, I'm crossing Broadway so I can bring you down to our first museum. What is coming up is a must if you are visiting with young children. This is the Museum of Ice Cream, which brings you an immersive experience in a 3-level playground of ice cream and candy treats, including a multi-story slide and a pool filled with millions of sprinkles. On the other side of Broadway, we find the Little Singer building. Built in 1904 in a Beaux-Arts style, this was originally, believe it or not, a factory for Singer sewing machines. If your grandmother had a Singer sewing machine, it was probably made in that stunning building. Next to that is the world headquarters of the Scholastic Corporation, which was built in 2001 in a postmodern style by the Italian architect Aldo Rossi. Scholastic is a publisher of educational and children's books, including the Hunger Games and the Harry Potter series. Okay, we have some heavy traffic coming up. Here on the left we have the Japanese fashion brand Uniqlo. We are currently on the most famous street in New York City. Originally a Native American trail named Wigwaskek that meandered through the rocks and swamps off the island. Today, Broadway is the longest north-south thoroughfare in New York City, starting at the Battery at the southern tip of Manhattan and continue up the island through the Bronx and finishing about 20 miles north of the city outside the famous village of Sleepy Hollow. Now we've arrived at Spring Street, and down on the corner of Spring and Crosby Street we find Balthazar, the excellent French brasserie and boulangerie by the legendary British restaurateur Keith McNally. Very popular for brunch. Let's keep going. Because of its American Indian origins, we are also on the oldest street in New York City. On the right there is the line to get into the US flagship store for the Chinese fashion brand Urban Revival. Moving on fast, we are coming up on a cross street that has landmark buildings on every corner, including a building considered the greatest remaining single monument to cast iron architecture in the world. Okay, let me just get through here safely first. Gonna pull in here on the left. Now first up I want to show you a SoHo landmark. With its beautiful 2-story copper-fronted mansard roof, this is the New Era building, which was completed in 1893 and is one of the few and possibly the earliest Art Nouveau buildings in Manhattan still standing. Next we're coming up on Broome Street. 1 minute here. Now across Broadway we find the Hagen building, which was built in 1894 in a Romanesque style. It is better known as the Silk Exchange due to the number of early tenants from the silk industry. Because of its stunning intricate decoration, the upper floor exterior has been compared to a wedding cake. In the 1980s it became a 25-unit work-live apartment building for artists. The red brick building on the corner is the beautiful Lamb and Rich building. And up Broome Street on the right, next to the Harvey and Sons Tea Room, we find Broome Hotel New York. Opened in 2014, it is a European-style boutique hotel. Now I'm crossing Broadway again to show you that aforementioned greatest remaining single monument to cast iron architecture in the world. This is the E.V. Howitt building. Completed in 1857 in a Venetian palazzo style, its Corinthian columns are reminiscent of Sansovino's great library in Venice. Originally it was an emporium of silverware, china, chandeliers and cut glass on the bottom 3 floors, with a factory on the upper 2. The Howitt building was the first cast iron facade structure to be declared a New York City landmark and was the first building in the world to have an Otis passenger elevator installed. We are looking at what some people have deemed to be the world's first ever skyscraper. Now I'm coming back up at the corner so I can show you another look at the Lamb and Rich building. Completed in 1883 in a mixture of Romanesque revival, Moorish revival and Queen Anne styles, it now houses artist lofts with living and workspaces. Next we see the beautiful cast iron Richard Morris Hunt building. Completed in 1874 in a mainly French neo-Greek style, Hunt is more famous for designing the base of the Statue of Liberty. Moving on, our next attraction is a lot of fun, especially if you have children. Gonna pull in here on the left. Described as a cornucopia for the senses, this is the flagship store for the Slow-Mo Institute, which provides a sensory play experience using slime, including a do-it-yourself bar that allows you to design your own slime. Very popular. Continue down Broadway, we're coming up on Grand Street. Over on the right we find the SoHo location for the Japanese minimalist department store Muji, just behind that bus. I am turning left onto Grand Street. And here we find the Wells Fargo Bank in the Mills and Gibb building at 462 Broadway. Complete in 1880 in a French Renaissance style for the Mills and Gibb importers who specialise in lace, linen and dry goods. Passing the naked and famous denim store, we are heading east on Grand. And coming up, La Batista, the self-described only organic plant-based and carbon-neutral restaurant in New York City when it first opened. It is inspired by the vegetarian haven in Europe that is the city of Ghent in Belgium. This is Crosby Street, another famous high-end shopping street in Soho. But for now, some more Soho history. Back in the 1950s, the city considered building a massive 8-lane elevated highway called the Lomax, short for the Lower Manhattan Expressway. Connecting Brooklyn to the southeast with New Jersey State to the west, it would have ran right through Soho and result in the raising of a large swath of blocks and the demolishing of a lot of the cast iron buildings that we've already seen today, which were mainly abandoned at that time. Thankfully, protests by local artists and activists resulted in the city shelving the plan, and instead Soho got its historic district designation in 1973. Rapkin-Gayle Plaza here is named after the two people who were most instrumental in saving Soho back then. One was Chester Rapkin, who was a professor of city planning, and the other was Margaret Gayle, who was a preservation activist. A beautiful little park. Here we see Miu Miu continue the Soho tradition of hand-painted advertisements on billboards. Across the street we have the Solita Hotel. It is mid-range with 42 small, clean and stylish rooms. Up on the next corner, the landmark coffee shop on the left is an old school American diner. It's been serving cheap eggs and coffee there for decades. If we were to keep going west, we'd enter the neighbourhood of Little Italy. On the corner here is the popular Grand Street Social, serving elevated American cuisine. Next door is the karaoke bar 157 Lafayette, and then a Starbucks. Here we have a tattoo and piercing shop. And then on the left we find the back entrance for the Museum of Chinese in America. A small museum that, since 1980, has been preserving the history, telling the stories, promoting the culture and celebrating the accomplishments of Chinese in America. On the right we have 5 Points Academy, a martial arts training facility. And this is the line for a flash sale by the New York clothing company Park. On the corner we find 11 Howard, a luxury boutique hotel with over 200 rooms, where Danish minimalism meets New York realism. If we headed east on Howard Street, the next neighbourhood is Chinatown. And up on the corner is the great Southeast Asian restaurant, The Tiger, one of my favourites. But we're heading south on Lafayette Street, named after the Marquis de Lafayette, a French hero of the American Revolution. He eventually returned to France, where he became a key player in the French Revolution. Some man the Marquis was. We are coming up on our next hotel. But first, on the far corner across Canal Street, we see the Bruce Building. In New York City, a National Historic Landmark, it was completed in 1857 in an Italian palazzo style and is one of the earliest surviving cast iron buildings in the city. Across Lafayette, we find the JG SoHo Hotel. It is a budget-friendly hotel in a pretty good central location. Now, what makes this building special though is its 5-story mural dedicated to one of the greatest of Spain's poets, Federico Garcia Lorca. The mural contains excerpts from his famous book, A Poet in New York, which he wrote while studying in Columbia University in the late 1920s. Next, I must show you something that is a very important feature of the city's iconic skyline. Although they look like a relic from a long gone era, most buildings in the city over 6 stories need a water tower, and these wooden ones are the most efficient and cost effective. There are over 17,000 water towers dotting the skyline of every neighbourhood in New York City, and they are iconic. Coming up on the left here, we have our first Michelin star restaurant. Located on the ground floor of the 11 Howard Hotel, Le Coucou has been bringing us upscale French cuisine from the celebrity chef Daniel Rose since 2016. In 2023, the New York Times placed it 58th on its list of the 100 best restaurants in New York City. That is the line to get some parked denims and sweatshirts. Next week, it'll be a completely different pop-up. The 11 Howard Hotel contains a lounge called the Library, a restaurant called Arubia, and an intimate bar called the Blonde that is very popular with the after-work crowd. Now, you come to this part of Soho if you want to visit independent boutiques or smaller brands. And not just boutiques. Here we have a high-end home goods store with the brilliant name Bury Your Dead Downwind. With the location in Los Angeles as well, this very cool store designs their goods in-house. We have a coffee shop next door. Some smaller boutiques here on the left. I'm turning right onto Crosby Street, which was not named after an American Revolutionary War general, but instead after a wealthy 19th century philanthropist named William Bedloe Crosby, who devoted a considerable amount of his time and money to local neighbourhood charities. Next, on the right, we have the upscale Nomo Soho Hotel. It has 270 rooms described as beautifully high-tech with excellent views above the 15th floor. The Nomo Kitchen restaurant is in the greenhouse conservatory that we see here on the left. And on the right, the hotel has an attractive social media ready entrance that they call the Tunnel of Love. Heading back down to Howard Street, here on the corner we have the Parisian fashion house, the high-end boutique Maison Margiela. Boutiques here on the left. And more stores here too. We are a block from Canal Street now, so the neighbourhood turns a little bit grittier down here with a lot of graffiti. Crossing the corner we find the Shops of Soho, which is a small independent shopping mall with a huge selection of jewellery, local artist sneakers, custom clothing and more. And on the other corner we find the historic A.J. Dittenhofer warehouse. Built in 1871 in a Venetian Renaissance style, it is another beautiful example of cast iron architecture. It has a distinctive look and a very distinctive colour. Coming up on the corner is our last museum, a different kind of museum. The Banksy Museum in New York is different in that the famous street artist Banksy has nothing whatsoever to do with this museum, and none of the exhibits are real Banksy. They are just all replicas of his work. It is interesting. Now across Canal Street, let's go back here. Subway alert, if you want to get to this corner, take an NQ or W train to the Canal Street station. We have arrived at Canal Street, Soho's southern boundary. Across Canal on the far corner, this historic art modern designed building was completed in 1927 for the First National City Bank, eventually becoming today's City Bank. It was located here up until the 1990s. We are on Canal Street, named after a short-lived early 19th century canal that was used to drain the swampy land that was flowing New York's northern expansion. In 1819, the canal was filled in and became this wide boulevard. Coming up on the right-hand corner, we find the Roman and Williams Guild, a luxury home goods store that is in the Arnold, Constable and Company building. Let me see if I can give you a better look at this. Completed in 1857 for the company that was the largest department store in the US at that time, the Arnold, Constable and Company building is also known as the Marble House, and the ground floor contains the very popular upscale French restaurant Le Mercerie. Now let me just get back on track. Let me get around here. On this corner we have a lighting store that apparently is the city's largest supplier of light bulbs and parts. And further down is a DJ supply store called Canal Sound and Light. Next we have a pair of maybe the oldest homes on Canal Street. Completed in 1821 in a federal style, they currently house an art gallery and a vintage football jersey store. Moving on, we're coming up on our final corner, on which is located this famous store. Canal Rubber has been here for decades and is a supplier of all things rubber, including custom-made products. That small building in the corner has been listed on the National Register of Historic Places since 1989. The United States Postal Service Canal Street Station was completed in 1937 in an art modern style. And towering over it in the background is the New York City landmark AT&T building. Completed in 1932, this Art Deco design mammoth telecommunication building has been described as a steel skeleton draped with a finely crafted brick curtain. And we finish with that striking building in Tribeca. 56 Leonard, known as the Jenga Tower, and also the aptly named houses stacked in the sky, is one very cool apartment building that was completed in 2017 and has been described as the most alluring addition to the downtown skyline in decades. And that is it, folks. We are finishing up back where we started on Green Street, so stay tuned for some final messages. Alright, so thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my cycle around Soho. If you did, give me a like, leave me a comment, or ask me any question you have about New York City. If you love the show, why not buy me a coffee? It will encourage me to keep showing you more of these neighborhoods. But more importantly, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss another episode. Because next week, I'm coming from Dumbo. See you then.